The Student by Angela Goldey. Janet Marsh had the average educational background which most people have today. She had a pleasant personality, which had won her many friends. Possessed with an innate curiosity, she had always wanted to know the why of everything. The conventional answers did not satisfy her. Her continuous questions exasperated her parents, who told her, "There are many things in this life we cannot understand. It is best to let them alone." These answers made Janet restless. She felt she was being shut out of something, and so she pondered and wondered and tried to figure things out for herself. She was very sincere, but a bit headstrong. One of her greatest faults was her impatience. She wanted what she wanted right then and there, and if she did not get it, she was very dissatisfied. When Janet was a little girl, her mother had her picture taken. Janet wanted to see it immediately. When her mother explained it would take about a week to have the film developed, she stamped her feet and cried. She wanted to see it then and could not understand why she had to wait. As she grew older, her impatience grew with her, and when an idea came that appealed to her, she would try to move heaven and earth to get what she wanted right away. Janet loved flowers, trees, animals and birds. They all seemed like real people to her. The flowers and trees had a language all their own, and she would stop and talk to them as she passed by. Animals received their share of attention, too, and she was always sure they knew what she meant when she stopped to pet them. People considered her queer and shook their heads when she talked about nature and the things of nature. Janet liked to read and was always delving into philosophy, to the dismay of her parents, who tried to discourage her. One summer evening she went for a walk and on her way home stopped at the public library. As she wandered around in the library, she came to a shelf rather crowded with philosophical books. Her hand touched a certain book and she took it down from the shelf. She was not looking for anything in particular, and why she reached for that book she has never been able to say. Glancing through the pages, she had the feeling of contact with an old friend. There were many illustrations of shrines and temples of Egypt and India. Janet had always felt a strange fascination for anything Egyptian, a sort of unfilled longing she could not understand. One thing she did know, and that was the music, pictures, stories, or anything about Egypt stirred something in her soul. She sometimes felt she should have been born there, but when she voiced this opinion, people smiled at her and told her how queer she was. Nevertheless, she took the book home with her. It was the story of a man who traveled far and wide seeking a spiritual teacher, one who would give him the answers to what he wanted to know. Well, thought Janet, here is a man who had the same longing of soul I have, and he went all the way to Egypt and India to get the answers. The tale unfolded his great search and his contacts with many teachers. At the end of his journey, the man found the first teacher he had encountered had given him the same answer as the teacher he found when he ended his quest. If he had heeded the words of the first teacher, he would have saved himself many weary miles of traveling. However, curiosity is often like a mirage, tempting people to seek in the distance what may be at their own feet. Janet read nearly all night, and when she finished the book, she believed something had happened to her. The little book, which had become so dusty on the library shelf, unraveled something as it lay before her. She understood its message but did not know how to go about picking up the threads so as to apply them to her own life. As she reflected, she concluded that the mere fact that the author had personal contact with these teachers and the benefit of their instructions and wisdom, opened the way and made it easy for him. She was in America, far, far away from these temples of secret wisdom. How could she ever expect to do these things all alone? If only I could meet a teacher, she cried, then I could find out. This seemed impossible. But she wanted more than anything else to meet a teacher. One day about a month later, a friend handed her a card of invitation to a lecture by a teacher of philosophy from Egypt. She was so eager to see and hear him she could hardly wait. She arrived at the place the lecture was to be given far ahead of the specified time and sat in the first row. When the teacher appeared on the platform, dressed in his Egyptian robes, Janet was spellbound. He looked like a man who had stepped out of an old book. Eagerly she drank in every word he said. She enrolled in the classes he was teaching. When she went home, she could not sleep. Now she had seen a teacher, but she wanted more than anything else in the world to meet the teacher. She mentioned it to a friend the next day and he laughed and said, "Do you think a man as busy as he would have time to bother with you?" But Janet felt she had to meet the teacher personally, and during her lunch hour telephoned to him. When he answered the telephone, she was so surprised, she was almost speechless. Quickly recovering her speech, she asked for an appointment. He was very kind and told her to come and see him at once, if it was possible. When she arrived, her heart pounded fast, as his secretary showed her in. As he sat before her, she pelted him with questions. He let her talk, and when she had finished he spoke to her softly, encouraging her to study and learn all she could of spiritual matters. Above all, he stressed meditation. He told her how necessary it was to go within her own consciousness and contact the great universal fountain of wisdom. To her surprise he, too, gave her the answer that the teachers of wisdom in the book she had read had given to the man on his great search. He also advised her to follow the spiritual dictates of her heart and to apply the principles of the fundamentals he was teaching in his class. If you do this, he said, one day you will have the great spiritual happiness you have been seeking. Now, it is up to you. I can give you the formula, but you must apply it yourself. I cannot do it for you. The interview lasted nearly an hour, but to Janet it seemed like 5 minutes. She left with a feeling of supreme happiness. Ah, at last I have found what I have been looking for, she said. All that afternoon she found it difficult to apply herself to her work because she wanted to go home and meditate. Each night she attended the class, making notes on the precepts outlined by the teacher. At its termination she was fairly bursting with wisdom and felt a little sorry for some of her friends who did not know the things she did. For a time after the teacher went away she felt satisfied. For a while she no longer plied anyone with questions and went about in a sort of trance and off-the-earth feeling and attitude. But as time passed and the contact with the teacher wore off, she began to gradually slip into her former ways. Fundamentally, Janet had the answers, but it took strength and determination to put them into practical application. As before, impatient, she expected a miracle to happen right then and there. She soon became discouraged when matters did not adjust themselves for her immediately. She did not take into consideration the fact that she had been raised in an entirely different environment than her teacher, and that her orthodox ideas would not entirely slip away overnight. She did not want to be the student but the finished product all at once. However, her great desire for truth urged her on and on, for in spite of her impatience she was most sincere. Janet, like a lot of people, had the book knowledge of the truth but had not really taken it into her soul and made it a part of her. So truth knocked at the door of her heart. She knew truth was there, but she was a bit unwilling, much as she longed for it, to turn the key and let truth enter. For a long time she didn't know why she just let truth stand. Many people do this. They hear the gentle knock but let habits, traditions, old beliefs, fixed ideas, cry out and keep them locked in superstition, fear, and limitation. Thus, they pause in their journey. Janet continued her meditation but not wholeheartedly. One evening she thought she heard her teacher say, "Now it is up to you. You must apply it yourself. I cannot do it for you." Janet turned the key and let truth step in. "Now my problems are really solved," she cried. "All these months I have been fooling myself by not applying the principles my teacher taught me." Janet thought it would be like rubbing a magic lamp and presto, a new world. Now that she had let truth into her heart, nothing could ever disturb her. At first, truth, perhaps, is a strange guest. When truth stepped over the threshold of Janet's heart, all the castles she had built, ideas and ideals she had entertained crumbled like the dust. Little did she realize that when truth entered, there was not room for both the old ideas and the new ones, so truth swept them aside. The old ideas all stood outside the door of Janet's heart and she beheld them a bit sorrowfully. Everywhere she turned she saw an old friend, an old habit, an old belief. She forgot to look at truth but let herself miss her old friends as they tried to come back into her heart. But truth stood between and kept them out. She spent many hours watching her old friends. Very little did she look within, and when she did she felt bare and empty. Again impatience had carried her to this point. She had wanted all the understanding and knowledge of truth right then and there. She did not take into consideration that it just did not come in a flash. She wanted the new but refused to let go of the old, wanting all of them at the same time. This went on for quite a while. Then one day she thought she heard her teacher say, "Now it is up to you. You must apply it yourself. I cannot do it for you." Janet seated herself and became quiet. She thought over all she had been taught and she smiled to herself at how foolish she had been. She had wondered why the man in the book went all over Egypt and India in search for his answers when the first teacher had given him the answer, and here she was doing no better. All this while she had the key to understanding but had been trying to work it out her way, instead of going within her own consciousness as her master had taught her. She realized truth had come to stay, that truth was undaunted by her hostility but had patiently abided in her heart. One by one her old friends without crept away, and Janet was amazed when she looked out again to find how really few of them she actually believed in. After her meditation she felt calmed and looked out once more. The longer she looked, the more she realized how blank and empty it was outside. She no longer really wanted to look without, so the only way she could look was within. The next evening she meditated again. This time she came to the center of her heart. It was bare of all its former decorations. Instead of the flickering she beheld a radiant light which wrapped her soul in peace. She became soothed as she watched. She thought she heard a voice say, My child, I am truth. I have entered your soul forever. When I came to you, you were amazed and bewildered by my presence. You had sought me, but when I came you fought me. You thought you were ready, but you were reluctant to break the old ties that bound you to your former ways. I swept them out, but you could not tear yourself away from them all at once. One by one they gradually slipped away and you knew not which way to turn. You had to turn within. My child, I am simple, peaceful, loving. You are always in my light. I will always guide you. I speak softly at all times. You must be quiet. Seek me in your meditation, for while there, you hear me speak. I am that inner voice. I prompt you always. Stay within yourself. Seek not here nor there. Run not on many paths, but stay within thine own heart. You must solve your own problems and the answer is always within. I am within. I am truth. Ye shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free. Janet is a different person now. She has found happiness and peace. She has curbed her impatience and no longer expects the world to change overnight. Whenever she has a problem, she always seems to hear her teacher say, "Now it is up to you. You must apply it yourself. I cannot do it for you.